All right, everyone, ready for a deep dive? Today we're tackling an episode of The Space Between Ideas with Blaine Gates. And let me tell you, this one's a real head scratcher.
Oh, is it ever?
I mean, he goes from talking about cooking to personality traits, even throws in some thoughts about being alone.
Yeah, you really got to hand it to Blaine. He doesn't shy away from jumping between ideas.
Exactly. It's like, what's the common thread here? What's he really getting at? That's what we're here to figure out today.
Sounds like a fun challenge. So where do we even begin with this one?
Well, one thing that jumped out at me was his take on the big five personality traits. He's not buying it, is he?
Not one bit. Remembers that whole bit about the pork recipe? Just one example of how he picks those apart.
Right. And then he compares it to driving. Like those two things even go together, but somehow he makes it work.
That's Blaine for you. But I think what he's trying to get at is this whole idea that those big five traits don't really explain why people do things.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. He's more interested in the why, right?
Exactly. Like, why is someone a careful cook? Is it because they're just naturally conscientious? Or could it be something deeper, like they really want to impress their friends with a delicious meal?
So are you saying those personality traits are just surface level? They don't tell the whole story?
It's like Blaine says, they're more like symptoms than the actual cause.
I'm with you. It's like knowing someone's open to new experiences doesn't tell you what's driving them towards those experiences in the first place.
And that's where I think the whole hunger metaphor comes in. Did you notice how often he uses that word?
Oh, absolutely. It's like he's craving something, but it's not just food, right?
Exactly. He's talking about a hunger for knowledge, for achievement, even for connection, like this deep-seated desire that pushes us forward.
And that ties right back into the name of the show, doesn't it? The space between ideas.
Right. It's like he's saying the space is that gap between where we are and where we want to be, and it's that hunger that drives us to close that gap.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going. So
Right.
we've got this hunger that pushes us, but then how do we choose which direction to go? How do we actually try to satisfy it?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Remember his story about being a lawyer in China? The whole driver versus passenger thing?
You know what? I was just thinking about that story. At first, it felt like a total non sequitur, but now I think it's actually the key to the whole thing.
Because it's all about choice, isn't it? Are you
Okay.
calling the shots or just along for the ride?
Exactly. Are you the driver or the passenger? And what I find interesting is that Blaine doesn't seem to be saying one is better than the other.
Right. It's more about knowing yourself. Some people are born to be in the driver's seat, but others find fulfillment in supporting someone else's vision. And that's okay.
It totally is. It all goes back to that idea of hunger, doesn't it? But it's not just about having a goal, it's about knowing what truly satisfies you.
You hit the nail on the head. Are we chasing our own hunger or are we letting someone else dictate our desires? Because it's so easy to just go through the motions, to get so caught up in the day-to-day that we lose sight of what actually matters.
Ugh, tell me about it. Deadlines, to-do lists. It's like, when do we get to just stop breathe? But that's exactly why I think this episode is so important. Because Blaine is forcing us to hit the pause button, to step back and ask ourselves, why am I even doing all of this?
And it's not a comfortable question, is it? But it's a necessary one if we ever want to uncover those state purposes he keeps hinting at.
Okay, so this is where I need you to break it down for me. What are state purposes? Because Blaine never actually comes out and defines them, does he?
He doesn't, and honestly, I think that's deliberate. He's throwing out these pieces, these little clues, but he wants us to put the puzzle together ourselves.
So how do we make sense of it all?
Well, I think it starts with looking for the common thread. We've
Yeah.
got the hunger metaphor, the lawyer story, all these seemingly disparate ideas. But if we connect the dots, a pattern starts to emerge.
All right, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
I think Blaine is trying to tell us that state purposes are those fundamental driving forces within us, the core values, the deep-seated needs, the burning aspirations that truly shape our choices and determine the direction of our lives.
So these state purposes, they're like the fuel for that hunger.
Precisely. They give our actions meaning and purpose. They're the compass and the motivation, guiding us towards a life that feels truly fulfilling. And what's even more exciting, once we understand our own state purposes, it can be incredibly empowering
How so?
because it allows us to make conscious choices, choices that are aligned with what truly matters to us instead of just reacting to outside pressures.
Which is what he was getting at with the whole driver versus passenger analogy, right? We all have the power to choose how we engage with the world, but first, we have to figure out what's driving us.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership, recognizing that incredible power we have to direct our own lives. And that, my friend, is a question we should all be asking ourselves. What are your state purposes? What motivates you, gets you out of bed in the morning?
Man, talk about a question to ponder. But seriously, it's a good one. And it's not always easy to answer, is it? It's like trying to define, I don't know, what makes you happy? Where do you even start?
Right. It's this big, abstract idea, but I think that's part of what Blaine is getting at. It's about, like, taking the time to really dig deep and figure out what makes you you.
Yeah, like forget all the noise for a second. What really gets you fired up? What makes you feel aligned? I don't know if that's the right word, but
No, I think you're spot on.
yeah.
And what I find so freeing about this whole idea is that there's no right answer. Your state purposes could be totally different from mine, and that's perfectly fine.
Exactly. The point is to figure out what works for you. What makes you feel most alive?
It's like, remember those times when you get so lost in something, you completely lose track of time? Maybe it's a project at work or painting or even just a really good conversation.
Oh, absolutely. Those flow state moments.
Right. I think those moments hold clues. They tell us what we're naturally drawn to, what lights us up when we're firing on all cylinders.
Love that. So it's about paying attention to those moments, but it's also how do we use that knowledge to make actual changes in our lives? That's the next step, isn't it?
100%. Because knowing your state purposes is one thing, but then you got to ask yourself, okay, is my job, my relationships, the things I'm spending my time on, are those things moving me towards what I truly value?
And if the answer is no, what then?
Well, maybe it's time to make some adjustments. I'm not saying everyone needs to quit their job and go find themselves on a mountaintop, though.
Tempting.
Maybe just a long weekend.
Exactly. But even small changes can make a world of difference. It could be as simple as, like, setting boundaries at work so you have more time for a hobby, or having an honest conversation with your partner about what you need.
It's about taking control, isn't it? Being intentional about where we direct our energy. Right. And I think that's the real beauty of what Blaine is getting at with this space between ideas, concepts. It's in that space, that gap, where we have the power to choose who we want to be.
So well said. So, to everyone listening, take a minute and really think about this. What are your state purposes? What truly motivates you? What makes you feel truly authentically you? Because once you know that, the possibilities are endless.